Join us for our upcoming fundraiser, A Feast for the Senses, at Ardmore Music Hall on September 29th to help HRN expand our table and provide even more resources to the next generation of food storytellers. This is going to be an unforgettable night of flavors, crafted by Best of Philly chefs Randy Rucker and Eli Collins, with sounds curated by Philly-based Spaga featuring Aaron Magner, and conversations inspired by Delicious City Philly host Eli Culp. You can find tickets at heritageradionetwork.org/feast. And if you can't make it to our fundraiser, please consider donating to support our education programs at heritageradionetwork.org/donate.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways. Hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pitmasters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey. Welcome to another episode of Culture and Flavor with your host, Zella Palmer. Y'all, I am so excited to have my friend, Chef Benjamin B.J. Dennis, on this podcast. It is such a pleasure to work with him over the years. I consider him a dear friend. We have known each other for years, and we have supported each other's work for quite some time. BJ is an American Gullah Geechee chef. He is from Charleston, South Carolina. He has done so much work that is critical to African-American foodways, particularly in the South, and particularly holding up Gullah and Geechee culture. Welcome, BJ, to Culture and Flavor.
Thank you. Yeah, we go back.
We go back, yes. And I want my listeners to know that I consider you one of the best chefs in the United States. I adore your food. I adore you as a cultural bearer. I am so proud of everything that you have done over the years. I was so honored and humbled that you said yes when I curated the Nellie Murray Feast back some years ago. And literally the dish that you made, the okra dish that you made, it was the best okra I've ever had. And I've had a lot of okra in my life, but yours was the best. I have seen you just evolve and, really tell, the Gullah story and preserve and uplift your elders, your community in South Carolina. And, I saw you on High on the Hog on Netflix. Many of you all might have seen him on the first season. I remember just my personal story of my mother when I was a teenager showing me Daughters of the Dust and the impact that it left on me and just watching my mother, who has deep roots in North Carolina, particularly, and, that the way that she responded to that film by Julie Dash and what it meant. And then fast forward, here I am visiting and seeing the land through your eyes was so profound for me. And visiting Joseph Field's farm, just listening to you. And so I want to just really give this interview an opportunity for you to just talk. A lot of times I feel that you are interviewed, but sometimes it's just snippets. And I don't feel that your flowers are given enough to you. And I want to just, have this conversation with you and really just talk about you and your work. And I want to think about, kind of setting the tone and space for this conversation and thinking about vibration cooking, the travels of Erdemik Ravner and give libations to the elders, and give you an opportunity to really talk about your work. And I'm gonna leave the floor open for you, my dear friend. So please start with your journey. Let's start with your journey into reclaiming the land and, continuing in that griot spirit of the elders to tell Gullah stories.
Ooh, well, first, thank you. Those words, I mean, coming from you means so much. I could go on and on and on, about how I feel. But yeah, I'll get to it. So, yeah, my journey. I started off as a dishwasher in Charleston. My first job was at, people call it a tourist trap now, but it was, let's see, 26 years ago. I'm in seafood. So long story short, I went to College of Charleston. I graduated high school 97. Night of graduation, we all hanging out, we partying. I had to leave early because I had to go to school the next morning to take 2 courses to get into the College of Charleston. So long story short, I had a little too much fun my one and only year at a university, so my parents were really, really upset and said, you're not going to live here for free. You're still going to go to school. So I ended up going to technical college, Trinidad and Technical College, which many people know now as, they had a culinary program. It was a basic culinary program because Johnson & Wales was still in the city at that time, and Johnson & Wales was the big school. But Trident Tech was just a regular culinary program at that time, and now everybody knows it as the Culinary Institute of Charleston. My buddy Kevin Mitchell was one of the professors there. But I went to there. It wasn't called that then, but I went to Trident Technical College, Culinary Arts. First semester, I actually took business. And I started washing dishes. Literally, I had to get a job. My parents were like, you're not going to live here for free. You wasted a year of our money. So I started washing dishes. And, I got in these kitchens, and particularly Hyman's. And, it was all these brothers, that I recognized, I'm saying, the lingo. I recognize the talk. I recognize the gold teeth. This is what I grew up around, and I recognize, actually some people who I went to church with, some of the brothers I went to church with, and I just recognize them in the streets and just, living in Charleston in these kitchens, and so it gravitated to me, truthfully. It really did. It was, sometimes in failure, which school was a failure for me, you find yourself. And little did I know that the kitchen was where I wanted to be. And I've always been into culture, my parents, my mother, made sure I read, history, and again, she gave me books, both my parents, but my mother in particular made sure that she knew that there was education outside of what she could tell me, what the school system could tell me, and what was also there that the schools weren't going to let us know, books that weren't going to be in those schools. So, autobiography of Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and like Charleston history books, because I knew there was something particularly kind of intriguing about us, but I didn't really know what it was. I tell you, I realized there was something different about how we kind of talk and stuff from Charleston, because when all my homeboys went to HBCUs, a lot of my homeboys went to HBCUs, particularly in Charlotte and Baltimore, and I would go see them, and it would be crazy. They'd be like, oh man, them guys love us up here, and these fellas can't stand us. The way we talk, they love us, but them girls love us. And I was like, man, that's crazy. But that was my first, and I got cousins who are not from the area, particularly like my mother. My mother's from Allendale County, which is, we call it upper part of the Low Country, but, I say they're freshwater Geechees. They have the dialect and the drawl, it's a whole nother conversation. It's muddled, you come to Charleston, you hear it pronounced, but, when you get outside of Charleston, it's become muddled because it wasn't something that was, it was a badge of shame. Truthfully, to say you were Gullah Geechee and you talk like that, you the Geechee talking person, you ignorant. So, when I would go to my mother's side, they would say, oh, my Geechee cousin is here. But Allendale County has a festival called the Cooter Festival. Cooter is the Gullah word for turtle. So, and my grandmother, I always said, if you hear James Brown speak, that's a freshwater Geechee. Mm-hmm. His accent, the way he speaks, they say, like my grandmother would say the same things my grandmother on the coast would say, but the accent was a little different. But yeah, that said, I'm rambling. But yeah, I start off in dishes. I start off in the kitchen as a dishwasher, and just, I always was in history, learning about our culture. And I love to go to Barnes and Nobles and bookstores. And I was always looking for cookbooks about us, and 25 years ago, that was few far between. So, I've just always been in the culture, and the one cookbook that really resonated to me, truthfully, was Charleston Receipts. When I picked up that cookbook and I saw every chapter started in a Gullah phrase, that really tried to kind of pique my interest. So, long story short, this is like 1999, 2000. I ended up taking culinary arts, and one of my teachers, Chef William Stacks, he was old Charleston. He had a seafood restaurant. It was only a few of us in that culinary program who were really in it for culinary. Truthfully, we went to school with a lot of housewives and a lot of retirees. Like I said, everybody was going to Johnson & Wales. I couldn't afford Johnson & Wales. But the few of us who were going to Trinidad Tech made sure that we wanted to work harder than the Johnson & Wales students because we feel like we were looked down upon because all the restaurants in Charleston wanted the J-Woo kids. But half them J-Woo kids coming from places where they don't know how to work hard, because, it is what it is. So we always made sure that we wanted to step our game up, being the few from Trinidad Tech that represent our culinary program. So, I went to Trinidad Tech. Chef Stacks, always told me, you're more than a stick man. And I was like, what's a stick man? He said, and he was a point blank when there was an older white man. He said, a lot of these restaurants only see you, people that are like you, as guys who can work the fryer. And he said, you're more than that. And that stuck with me. Chef Stack said, continue to work your way up from these seafood fry houses to the high-end kitchens in Charleston. Because he saw that passion. Rest in peace, Mr. Stacks. He passed some years ago from cancer. But he was an old school chef, So I went to Trinidad Tech. And, I worked at Hyman's and ended up working at, left Hyman's Seafood. I think my first kind of play into a quote-unquote a higher-end kitchen was 82 Queen. At the same time, I was running my homeboy tape store downtown Charleston, way before gentrified Charleston, in the hood. And there was a tape store in the front, beauty salon in the middle, barber shop in the back. My homeboy was still going to South Carolina State, so I was running his tape store too. So, I was still doing my culinary stuff, but still hanging out with the fellas. And, my homeboys, them did parties and they had clubs. So I would, did the club scene and I would cook food. We did boat rides. So I would do the food for boat rides every now and then and would do the club stuff too. So I was, all over the place in a sense, but my passion was always culinary. So outside of, working in these kitchens and doing the side hustle with my homeboys and going to culinary school, I was just your everyday person, never really thought about that everyday person raised up in Charleston. Never thought about we were so different, or not so different, but we had a different culture here that was different than a lot of other cultures in the country. So worked at, I think I worked at 82 Queen. I went to Anson's, which at that time, Anson's was one of the first farm-to-table restaurants in the city, and ended up working at Hank's Seafood. And this was around 2003. Hank's Seafood, the chef was Frank McMahon. This Frank was an Irishman who worked at Paul Bocuse in France and worked at Le Bernardin. He's the first chef. I never forget this. He came up to me busy Friday night before service, walked up, walking through the line, make sure everybody's good, put his hand on my shoulder and said, I'm going to make a chef out of you. You got it. And just looked at me saying, you got it. And just walked off. And I remember him going around to the front to Chef de Cuisine, Big Tom, rest in peace, Big Tom passed away some years ago. And I remember him pointing at me and saying, he gets it. So he didn't know at that moment, I wasn't planning on staying in Charleston too much longer because my neighbors who I grew up with were from the Virgin Islands, from St. Thomas. So it was always years of back and forth saying, one day I'm going to go to St. Thomas, one day to go to St. Thomas. And finally it came time because my neighbors were from St. Thomas, but the neighbors were from St. Thomas, but the wife was from Charleston. And her sister moved to St. Thomas years ago. She had a restaurant, a very popular local restaurant in St. Thomas called Eunice's Terrace. And she would come home on holidays and say, you cooking now? Well, I got a restaurant. So long story short, go back to Hank's. 3 of us were leaving, ironically enough, to go to the Virgin Islands. Crazy enough, me and two other fellas. And I never forget, one day, right before service, I walked into the building, but Chef was outside, just standing outside. He's like, I need to talk to you. And he was like, man, this giving me a year. I'm like, what you talking about, Chef? I heard that you so-and-so and so-and-so are leaving. I said, I said, yeah. I said, chef, man, I'm born and raised in this city. I got an opportunity to go. And, truthfully, there was some outside stuff going on in my life that I wasn't raised up. My parents didn't raise me up to be around certain things that was going on, and I'm not going to, typical stereotypical things that, not stereotypical, the things that young black men can get themselves into. And I was like, yo, it's time for me to leave. And so when the chef talked to me, I said, man, chef, I wish, but I got to go. So he respected that. And so, 2003 and 2004, I left. I moved to the Virgin Islands. And that's where the culture, that's where it hit me. So, when I would get really animated, like, I would be scared to really pronounce, because I didn't want people to think that I was trying to talk like a West Indian. So I remember one night I was in a car, my homeboy we all worked together, and St. Thomas was that was a wild time. I don't think I got time to tell you about that. That was a wild time. St. Thomas, we talking about 2004 to 2008. I was there for 4 years, but I remember when I first moved there, I remember one night we all went out and we were drinking, and I got animated, and my accent, it just started rolling, and he said, I thought the man was a Yankee. And he's like, you from Down Island? I said, no, I'm from Charleston. And truthfully, when I would run into a lot of Rastas, because Rastas, big into the diaspora, the culture, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm from Charleston. Oh, you one of them Gullah Geechee. And it would surprise me, like the amount of people, not just Rastas, where I'd be like, yeah, I'm from Charleston. They'd be like, oh, we heard of y'all. People from different islands. So being there really started to make me want to dig deeper into who I was as a person and where I'm from. All we know being from Charleston is that, we talk like this. When we go out of town, the girls love how we speak and blah, blah, blah. We ate certain foods that was maybe a little different than other parts of the state. But the culture and the roots and the reasoning behind that I started to really start to wonder more. So, I lived in St. Thomas for 4 years. It changed my life. It made me grow up, truthfully. I left as a boy and came back as a man. It changed my life. And I worked in some really cool restaurants there. I kind of hit the wall in St. Thomas, though. The Virgin Islands and the Caribbean is beautiful. But when you live there, you see it through a different perspective. You see it through what it really is. And it's a struggle. And St. Thomas is one of the more, I guess I won't say prosperous islands. It's a U.S. island. So you had all these people from different islands that were just coming to St. Thomas illegally. My ex-girlfriend, who I dated for 2 years, did not have papers. She was from Dominica, which is my favorite, one of the most beautiful places I ever laid my eyes on in my life. But so St. Thomas it made me grow up really, really fast. I'm not going to get into it, but the lady who I mentioned who had the restaurants when I moved, I guess she thought she was going to have a manservant. So I literally stayed in her house for 3 months, and I thought I was on my own. And I lived in when I tell people from St. Thomas where I lived at, I say, I used to live around the field. They're like, what? You live around the field? Around the field is one of the roughest neighborhoods, but I love that neighborhood. I can walk out my door and get Ital food. I can get local Creole food. I can, you know what I'm saying? Everything was accessible. And plus, I knew how to move around those environments. And, I don't bother nobody. They saw me, they know me as a dude who walking through the neighborhood with a chef pants on, So St. Thomas was really good for me. And, to see those murals on the walls of all these Pan-African leaders in our culture, and to see that, and to come from Charleston, where I got to ride down Calhoun Street and see his statue was no longer there, but John C. Calhoun, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and the former vice president of this country, who saying was a hold in the ground, keep a nigger down, coming from that perspective to St. Thomas, where it's like, I'm seeing, Haile Selassie. I'm seeing all these on these murals on the roads. I'm used to seeing founding fathers who were Confederate leaders, quote unquote. Certain people founding fathers. So it really kind of started changing my perspective. Came back in 2008. I came to Charleston in 2007 and actually went to a beer dinner and went to a beer dinner with a chef named Jeremiah Bacon, who I ended up working for when I moved back home. But I came back in 2007 to visit. He just came back from Per Se, opening team of Per Se. And I always wanted that. I'm always telling young cooks, there's nothing wrong with working in a high-end kitchen. You learn, it's not about the food, because they can't cook better than your granny. I'm sorry. But it's about what you learn, the structure, the professionalism, for the most part. There are toxic kitchens, but you learn so much, the little details. the business side of stuff. But yeah, Jeremiah, met him 2007. 2008, it was time to come home. I maxed out in St. Thomas. You know, I was 20, let me see, 2008. So I was 29. I was ready to come home, you know, and came back in 2008. Couldn't, crazy enough, full circle, right? Came back in 2008. That was when Charleston was like, I was like, what the hell happened? Well, first of all, I left Charleston in 2004, 2003, the biggest drug bust in the state's history hit downtown Charleston. That was the true start of gentrification. When I remember coming through the east side, I was outside the night before, and I was like, oh, everybody's outside on the block on the east side downtown. And I had to go to school. The school was on the east side, my Trinidad Tech. And I remember coming to school the next morning, and it was dead. I mean, the feds swept it was like a ghost town. And I remember when I would come home to visit, when I was living in St. Thomas, and I was like, wow, am I seeing this certain person walking a dog this time of night on this street? And I was like, okay. So when I came back in 2008, it was just crazy. Charleston was just starting to be this darling city, this food city. You had, you know, Sean Brock that's when Sean, you know, I was overseas. I'm like, who was Sean Brock? Who was Sean Brock? Came back, met Sean, Jeremiah. Actually, at that time in Charleston, you could not get in them kitchens. You could not get in those kitchens. I mean, everybody wanted to work with those chefs. So Jeremiah, who I met the year before and wanted to work with, he didn't have a spot for me. So full circle, where'd I end up being? Nighttime kitchen manager at a seafood restaurant, Seafood Classics Charleston Seafood House, Fleet Landing, which is now the busiest restaurant in downtown Charleston. So came back, became nighttime kitchen manager, nighttime chef. I mean, we would do like crazy, like we would do like, I think Memorial Weekend we did $30,000 on a Saturday. It was a busy place. It was a busy place. Made a lot of money, but I was losing myself because I got back. I mean, I don't drink, but all the managers had free tab, so we drank what we wanted to drink. And Charleston was a Grand Marnier city. I don't know if you know the story of Grand Marnier in Charleston, but nowhere else in the world drunk more Grand Marnier at that time than Charleston, South Carolina. In fact, true story. The people from Grand Marnier came to Charleston to see this city that drunk all this Grand Marnier, and they left appalled because people in Charleston weren't sipping it, and they were taking shots. This supposed to be, you know, people from France like, oh, this is disrespectful. But anyway, they came back and because like, wait a minute, this is big money. So they came back and yeah, Charleston is known for Grand Marnier. So I was drinking a lot of Grand Marnier and stuff around that time. And I was like, no, this isn't it. So I was there for like a year and a half. It grounded me though, because I was back in my city. So like those old seafood houses in Charleston those kitchens are typically going to be Geechee boys. Straight up. So it was like back into that. So it was like, okay, getting acclimated back into the city, into my people. So that was a blessing on that hand. But I was past that point in those type of restaurants. So a year and a half later, Jeremiah, I finally got a spot with Jeremiah, worked there, but ended up having to work 2 jobs because I made so much money at Fleet Landing. Now I'm back making line cook money, which it ain't nothing. And I went for management, and now I got management bills trying to pay that on line cook salary, so on line cook pay. So ended up working 2 jobs. Always worked morning and night. So I was always gone 7 a.m. It was like being back in culinary school. Going to school 7 in the morning. As soon as I get out of school, I'm going to work. But this time it was like get up in the morning, going to a prep job, and then after that prep job, hustling to the next kitchen to work the line. So you know, I've been doing it. So I left Carolina. I mean, it's been so long, but you know, long story short, did Carolinas around. I guess, let's see, did Carolinas, went a couple other places in Charleston. I went back to Anson's a couple times. And around 2011, 2012 is when the pop-ups stopped happening. Butcher and B. So I started doing pop-ups. Because I was like, well, Charleston's getting all these accolades. Everybody talking about these chefs and talking about this food scene in Charleston and low country food, but you can't talk low country food without talking Gullah Geechee. Like that's the queen mother of low country cuisine. Like what are we doing? So And I was like, yeah, I love our mom and pop spots, but they only give you a little taste of the culture. You know, that's not the food ways I grew up on. I didn't grow up eating overcooked, like, and out of season vegetables. You know, I grew up eating seasonal. I grew up eating stuff from, you know, the old man down the street, or my aunt boyfriend or friend. She say, my auntie who say that's her friend, but I know who that is, auntie. I know what that man got going on over here, bringing you them peas and stuff. you know. I just, I wanted people to taste the culture, so I started doing pop-ups, and truthfully, that's where it all happened.
That's around the time when I met you, and I just want to thank you, because when I met you, you invited me to the Nat Fuller Feast. And I want you to tell our listeners what the Nat Fuller Feast was and your participation in it. And, that's when I met you and Kevin Mitchell. And I remember looking back, I was sitting next to Reverend Pickney. I didn't know at that time, if you all remember the Charleston shooting at the historic Black church, I remember sitting next to him, and we were on the front cover of the paper for that Nat Fuller Feast in the Charleston newspaper. And I didn't know that, shortly after that, he would be gunned down, I was literally sitting right next to him. And that was such a profound feast in telling Nat Fuller's story. And I felt so welcomed by you. It felt like I was coming home. And that's really what gave me the idea, to come back to New Orleans and launch the Nellie Murray Feast. And you and Kevin participated in that. So I really appreciate you all for that.
Yeah, that was a beautiful dinner, the Nat Fuller. It's intriguing because I tell people all the time, like, I'm a manifestation of these old caterers. Not just of Charleston, but, of New Orleans and Savannah and Philly. Mm-hmm. And Nat Fuller, he's one of many. Catering, you can say it was a privilege in those days to be able to be a caterer, because you also had the opportunity to buy your freedom, which Nat Fuller, and I might get the story a little mixed up. I think he eventually did. I know that his wife took his former enslaver's wife to court over the property, and she won, actually. Mm-hmm. But Nat Fuller was a enslaved man. He was born enslaved. He was conceived by, his daddy was his enslaver. His daddy also sold him at like 15 years old. It's crazy to think about that you conceived somebody, more like it was rape, and then you say, well, hey, I'm going to sell you off anyway. But yeah, he was sold I think as a teenager to William Gatewood. Gatewood was from Virginia originally and bought a home in Charleston. Nat Fuller was his cook, and also Mr. Gatewood also was his financier. Helped finance the Bachelor's Retreat, which was Mr. Fuller's kind of, I want to say almost like it was a restaurant, supper club, not a full service restaurant. I'm not sure, but he catered and he had that restaurant. And the story goes that during the Civil War, or right after the Civil War, he hosted a dinner that had Black and white people sitting together at the table, and we tried to recreate that. And you came, and yeah, Reverend Pinkney was there. I had the same feelings, Ella. It was like, I talked to him. He's like, come by the church and talk to me. I would love to hear more. He was on the up and up, not just, like church, like politically for us. So yeah.
That was a profound moment. Woof. And that, I just think about that over and over again. And I just say, wow, we had this dinner where it was Black folks, white folks, all kind of people were at that dinner. And then he's gunned down.
Yeah. So he's from Ridgeland, South Carolina, which is like where I actually live at now, because I moved out of Charleston about 3 years ago. I'm actually an hour down the coast. So yeah, he's from this area where I'm at now. But yeah, and to walk into, I had to go inside the actual room. I had to do a catering there. Like it's like 5 or 6 months later, and to be in that room, and I was like, wow, it was hard.
Yeah,
it was hard.
I bet. But yes. I want to go back to, just the word Geechee, and the language and the stereotypes and the negative connotations that has come about of that. And I'm just thinking, I heard my son the other day, in New Orleans, they say, oh, boy, you Geechee, And I looked at him and I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, just the historical negative connotations that comes with it, and even looking and through archival research and just it's sad, and I think when I saw you, lifting up Gullah Geechee cuisine, it reminded me of that moment when I saw my mother cry watching Daughters for the Dust with me, and how she, was always adamant about indigenous Black cultures and making sure that, our children understood the importance and relevance of returning to the land. And I want to talk to you just about, some of the diversity and the beauty of Gullah Geechee cuisine and culture. I mean, my listeners, I want them to understand just how deep and profound Gullah Geechee culture is, from the rice to the grits to watermelon to healing through food and culture to the sweet grass baskets. The moment that you land in Charleston and seeing that, and the people and the commonality and intersectionality between Native people and Gullah Geechee people, I would love for you to talk about that.
I guess the quickest answer is like I learn every day. It's so vast. Our culture in general in America is so vast. Just to learn about the Low Country and everything that entails, that's a lifetime. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the rest of my life. It's crazy because, like, for me, moving out of Charleston and moving into these regions and moving out this way and seeing some of the stuff that's still being done, culturally, like just was in Riceboro. Like, we got a whole project this year after the rain will ease up on us around here, that we're gonna plant rice with this 80-year-old gentleman who grew up growing rice with his father and grandfather. That's profound for me, to be out with somebody who can still talk about his ancestors' legacy during enslavement and what they've been through. And then him wanting to show me the rice process because he feels it's important to pass it down. So, the culture is just, man, it's truly special. But I feel like, even like when I'm in New Orleans, it's like, damn, I'm home. It's, these cities, especially these port cities, these cities of entry, are special places, and with us, with the food, with rice, and rice tells a story. It's a painful story. But it's also a beautiful story. We don't look at rice. We don't look at rice in the way, like, when I got my friends who come from, like, up north or from the West Coast, and we might be on these back roads, and they see the cotton fields, and they get triggered. And I don't knock nobody's emotions, but I'd be like, you getting triggered over a cotton field. Wait till I start telling you the history of rice. Wait till you learn the history of rice. And, we'll ride around, I'd be like, you don't even know what you're looking at right now. And like, you don't even know that you're looking at the largest landscape you can see from the satellites. The rice fields. The largest landscape you can see in the world from the satellites. The rice fields of the Low Country of South Carolina and Georgia. And I say, can y'all imagine what I'm telling y'all? This is like there's no machine. This is human labor and animals. You see how big these cypress trees are? You can imagine you having to clear these out of swamps full with water moccasins and all these things, alligators. So, to be here, to live here, and most of us who live here don't even know sometimes, don't even understand where we're at because we're not taught, or we're not seeking, like we still like seeking the tradition of the youth going into the woods for a couple of days to find themselves, seeking part of that whole hoodoo lineage that was part of Christianity and the traditional African spiritual systems that were brought here. Because if you go to different parts of West Africa, Central Africa, or even parts of the Americas with indigenous folks, there's whole traditions of men and young ladies and groups going out into the woods for days as initiations. So these are all these parallels here, man. It's so much. Because I didn't grow up in that tradition, I grew up in Episcopal church. I didn't grow up in one of the old praise houses. The praise houses are these little tiny. You ride around. You're like, what is that? Like it's one room. We still see traditions like the ring shout. Which is part of Christianity, but all that came from traditional African spiritual systems.
I'm a song Kumbaya and the Kumbaya, and I always go back to that. I remember my grandmother singing that song.
Kumbaya. Somebody ask me what's something I can say in Gullah. I'm like, you probably say it all the time. You just don't even know. Kumbaya. Which I get kind of upset when people talk about, this ain't no kumbaya moment. I said, so I got to stop playing with that phrase because it's a deeper meaning to it than y'all thinking we holding hands and walking in unity. No, our ancestors sang that as a way to deliver them from a hard time. It's one of our many spirituals of the Low Country of South Carolina, which that's our unique musical gift to the world, is the spirituals. In a Low Country clap. And I was just looking at a video in Senegal, in Casamance, in one of the deepest rice regions in Senegal, and hearing that same clap. So it's deep. I mean, it's so deep that I tell people all the time when they say, I'm coming down there for 3 days, can you take me around? I said, you need 2 weeks. But I'm going to try to stuff some stuff in 3 days for you, but you're going to be overwhelmed.
Y'all, when we come back from a message from our advertisers, we're going to talk to Chef BJ Dennis about his travels. He's been to many places, and I'm so excited to hear about it, and I hope you are too. So we'll be back after a few messages from our advertisers.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland guided by their natural ecosystem. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Okay, we're back. I want to talk to you, BJ, about your travels, because since the last time I saw you, I haven't had a chance to, just hear your stories. And I know our listeners will really enjoy hearing about your travels. I know that, you worked with some of the elders in Trinidad and Hills Rice, and you've been to the Cameroon, Benin with Michael Twitty and a group of other chefs. Let's just, talk about your travels and what you've learned and how you brought it and connected with your own culture, and just how profound it has really elevated your work.
Oh, yeah, that's, I never in my life would have imagined that I've been able to go the places that I've been able to go. I am so grateful. Truthfully, I'm very grateful. I guess we can talk about the recent trip, since that's fresh in my mind now. Cameroon. Sure. Cameroon. So we were there. I was just there in February with two other folks who were with me the year before. The year before, it was crazy. We're not gonna go into details. Put it this way: sometimes some people are meant to have blessings, and some people are supposed to miss out on blessings. And the way things laid out, that's what happened. And a few of us happened to connect with a woman who is so powerful, so regal, but so caring and so gentle. Amamuna, Queen Mother Amamuna. She's putting together this event called Diaspora Kitchen. And the year before, not this past February, but the year before, we went to Cameroon and met her. Some things transpired, and we stayed the course with her. And I'm putting it to you this way. This year, all I had to do was pay for my plane ticket. Everything else, when I went to Cameroon, was taken care of. She's an actual Queen Mother. She's also was the former Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture. But she's a big deal, but does not come off like that. Put it this way: somebody showed me a picture on the flight back, not this past year, but 2 years back, because the gentleman wanted me to know, like, you don't know who you befriended, like who is in your corner now. So he pulled out a picture of Quincy Jones at his 25th. He was getting his lifetime achievement award from the NAACP at the NAACP Awards, and sitting next to him was Queen Mother as Quincy Jones' invited guest. She is a beautiful person. So I was just in there with her in Cameroon. And when you go to the motherland, like, I swear, like, next time I go, I gotta have a month, because the first 2 weeks is just so much, just trying to you're just going, trying to get adjusted to the time, to the energy. But it's home. Like, Cameroon, this past year, it was like a whirlwind. I got to eat with the pygmies, the people of the forest, and just to eat the different culture foods. You see the similarities, then you see what didn't translate across here, because we didn't have time anymore, because we were being whipped and beaten to pick cotton and indigo and rice. So, like the fermentation stuff that they still do, we didn't see as much. Well, let me rephrase that. We don't know if it was done here because they didn't document a lot of our stuff here. But, just being able to see these things, so, yeah, Cameroon, I've been, Senegal, Angola, Benin, Togo. Benin is a special place. Mama Africa is special in general. I lived in the Virgin Islands for 4 years. I went back to the Caribbean for the first time, in 2016. That was a trip. That was when I went to Trinidad, befriended Francis Maureen. Because he knew about the history of the Americans. He's from Trinidad. He was already coming to Charleston and coastal Georgia a year or two before I met him, and people told him about me. Ended up going to Trinidad. He wanted to do this rice conference. Brilliant person. Rice conference didn't go off like he thought it would go off. But we were in Trinidad, and being in those rice fields and being with that culture. It was just beautiful, because even people in Trinidad don't even know about hill rice, which blew my mind. I was like, wait, you don't even know about this rice in your own country, but it's a specific rice. The story of the Americans is beautiful. They fought in the war in 1812 for the British, because the British were like, hey, we'll give you your freedom. Win, lose, draw, you get your freedom. As many know, some went to Newfoundland, some went to British Columbia, and Bermuda, and some went to Trinidad. So, and with them, they still grow bene, they still do rice, and a lot of them are descendants of coastal South Carolina, Georgia, even down to Louisiana. So that was a beautiful trip. And then, I kind of island hopped, went down to Dominica, and I went back to St. Thomas for the first time in 8 years. So my traveling has been a blessing. It's really, been able to bridge those gaps. I feel like online there's too much separation, but I feel like when you meet people one-on-one, that kind of conversation that you see online doesn't happen. I've been showing nothing but love on my travels, and I've been to Haiti. Cannot leave Haiti. I was in Haiti in 2018, I think 2017. I told people when I was in Haiti, I was in Africa before I ever been to Africa. And Haiti was, oh my God. So when I see what's going on now, I feel bad, because the people is not the people. I hate the people in power and the power structure. And we can, that's a whole nother conversation. But the people who live there, some of the most kind-hearted, loving people I ever met in my life. So my travels has just broadened my horizons as a chef, but more than anything else has kind of, put those pieces of the puzzle together. And that's a lifetime journey. There's so much about us that still to be discovered, still to be found. People want to forget about slavery, and I understand that, but just even on the plantation, the fact that some of our enslaved people were still, even though they were living in these cabins, they still were making these out as the way the village would look. And there were things being done on these sites that I feel like that are important for us to find out about. So there's just so much. So yeah, travel. I've been blessed, but I've also put that work in to want to get to this point too.
I know this Cameroonian chef. Her name is Gladys Niath, and she came to Dillard and did a cooking demo. And I remember her posting this video in her stories. She's based in Los Angeles. And, there's huge interest now in, West African cuisine, Central African cuisine, Gullah Geechee, Creole, and Black food stories. And I remember seeing her post and, the media crew, she talked about the consistency of the beignet wasn't correct. And I remember you could see the media persons behind, and they said, "Oh, it's fine. Let's just keep rolling." And she said, she stopped them and she said, "No." She said, "My African parents and grandparents will not think that it's okay. I need this to stop and make sure this consistency is correct." And so I want to talk to you about food and media and making sure that Black indigenous stories are properly filmed, properly told, and the importance of having media listen to those who are the cultural bearers.
Ooh, you want to go there right now, Zella?
Go there. This is my podcast, Culture and Flavor. Let's go.
I think that's even a problem within our own. Because just because you look like me don't mean you grew up like me.
Ooh, come on now.
So yeah, I seen the trend. Okay, true story. So I just did something for Whole Male Foods with this young brother out of Virginia, young brother named Michael, and the video came out. It's okay. I was more happy to connect with him and his mom and their journey. But I remember being on set, and when they come, they always hire like a local camera crew. And I remember seeing this brother. He's always out there, and he like 7 8 years ago was trying to do stuff on Gullah. Like he was like, "Man, BJ, he's exact words to me like it's so crazy. Remember when I first connected with you? It might have been more like 10 years ago. He's like, I couldn't get nobody to want to do nothing about this. And now look what's going on right now. Look around me. Look around me." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yep." And everybody wants to have a piece of it. Everybody it's fashionable now. It hit the peak during the Black Lives Matter movement. It was like, ooh, it hit the peak. And you see that peak slowly starting to come down. But our stories are now everybody feel like they want to tell it or they want to hear about it. But we have to I think we have a responsibility to what they do and also hold them accountable to make sure like she did. No, this is not right. And to speak up and not just say just because they give it to you, just take it. Especially if you're the star, if you're the centerpiece, just don't take what they give you. And look, it took me a little while to learn that too. Like you got to speak up and say, no, this is how it's supposed to look. And I knew, truthfully, like that this was going to be the wave coming. Once a certain faction, a certain group of us made it comfortable to say, "Ooh, let's talk about Black food." Now, look, even your own kind coming in, swooping in, and like, "Oh, now I want to do this." And it's like, okay, and I get it. So I get it. I'm not knocking that. You were uncomfortable. Everybody had to process things differently. Not everybody wants to go on a plantation site. I get it, but damn. Don't forget about those who laid the groundwork for you to even be able to walk in those shoes and be comfortable to walk in those shoes now. So I think when we have the whole accountability to, when we're given a platform, you're the talent. You're the one to making everybody the money. So you need to let them know, no, this is how I want it done. And I feel like a lot of times they know who to select and who not to select, to make sure that you don't have that dynamic per se. And look, even with our own documentaries, I think sometimes, people behind the scenes have no clue, and they're learning. Truthfully, I'll tell you straight up, when I did Hide and Hog, I felt like I was teaching the whole time. I mean, ain't no knock. But I mean, if I'm gonna be transparent, I felt like I produced that whole episode, the one in Charleston, which I think to this day is everybody's favorite episode in that series.
Yeah.
I wasn't one to say no, this, that, and yeah, there's things that they did that they wanted to do. Like I was like, why are we cooking a hog on this one? This is the Rice Kingdom. Why are we cooking a pig?
Just had that conversation in another podcast interview.
I mean, I'm grateful, and I think the team they're great folks. But I knew what I was teaching. And I think sometimes, a lot of times, like the people who are the ones who should be in those positions who understand, they get overlooked or they don't have that, they don't get that shot. But like I always tell people, us who really do this culture work, we're not a fad, we're not a trend. Trends come and go, so you can hop on the trend and ride that trend, and you hop on the next one. But us who live the culture, this is forever. This is forever work. So yeah, I just say you got to hold people accountable, and you're not gonna be able to stop everything. Listen, I mean, there's gonna be everybody riding the wave now. It's comfortable to talk about black food, and I mean, from my own kind to folks who don't look like us.
So that leads me to how can we support your work? I admire you. I value you. I see you. And I know it would take 5 podcast interviews to really have, some deep conversations. And we've had deep conversations until the night, came out. So, but I want our listeners to, just know that BJ Dennis is the truth. And he is, one of the best chefs in my eyes in the country. And anything that I can do to support your work. And I know, there's a host of others who feel the same way, and, I just want to give you your flowers.
Well, thank you so much, Ella. I think this is everything you always done for me. I mean, truthfully, I spent my son will be 3 in May. These last 3 years, kind of just trying to navigate this, trying to navigate parenthood. And, I wasn't really out there like I was, before that. Even, I think I was doing more right when COVID hit. And then obviously my wife got pregnant and we moved. So I'm finally in a place now I'm revamping my business, going to get an official website, going to get all my business paperwork, everything back lined up where it needs to be, and I'm moving forward with. I said to myself, it's time for a cultural space. So I think just for me, just continue to support. You support the culture, you support me. You come to Charleston, we're gonna do a better job of like giving people heads up on all our cultural events. You come support my culture, you are supporting me, because I am just a manifestation of my ancestors. I am a manifestation of my culture. I'm just one of many here who just want us to. They can't run us from here. You can't, we need y'all to come down, come down, and we still a very insular culture. So, you reach out to me like, hey, I can tell you where to go. You want to meet some elders, we here. Come invest, come buy land, we here. I mean, buy land. You don't have to be in Charleston, it's you come support the culture, you supporting me. But as far as me, I'm about to hit a heavy revamp. Like I said, I spent the last 2.5 years just making sure that I am present as a father.
Such a beautiful baby.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh man, got these bags and these grades coming a little faster, but and truthfully, more importantly, like my wife, and she's a mother, and that job is so hard, man. Yeah. As much as I feel like the better I do to keep this roof over our head, the more she makes this house a home for my son and me.
Ashe.
And and making sure that her mental health was in a good place, because I mean, you're a mother.
That's right.
It's woof. So
like my mother said, they're yours forever.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's it. I'm back. I'm rolling out some events. I want to do a better job with my calendar. But just support the culture. You support the culture, you support me. And and if you come down, you need a caterer. Hey, I'm here. That's what I do. I think people don't. Let me say that people don't really realize that. I don't know. It's crazy. People are like, what do you cater? I'm like, yeah, that's how I make money. So yes, I am a full-time caterer, personal chef caterer. I can do weddings. I do weddings. I've done the NAACP 100-something anniversary a couple years ago, 800 people, and I'll do that down to 20 people in your house.
So good to know.
So yes.
Good to know. Thank you so much, BJ, for joining Culture and Flavor. I really appreciate just having this conversation with you, catching up, and I'm sure our listeners will do our best to just make sure that when we're in Charleston or, y'all heard him, he does weddings, he does this, fly him out, and give the baby a kiss for me, little man a kiss for me, and tell him Auntie Zella loves him. And thank you again for all that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate you giving me the platform. Sorry, I've been rambling so much.
Rambling? No, I want you to. I want you to talk. Because, like I said, there's just snippets out there of you and other people talking, and I want you to talk. Yes. Because you have so much to say, and you come from deep, deep, deep roots, and we need your voice. We need it.
We appreciate y'all.
Thank y'all. Have a great day, and hope you join us on another episode of Culture and Flavor. Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org.